This is Someone Like Me, the official podcast of End Slavery Tennessee. Through the telling of their stories, this show empowers survivors of domestic human trafficking and educates listeners on what's really happening in their own backyards. I'm Leslie, your host, and joining me is End Slavery Tennessee founder Derry Smith.
Hi, Leslie. Today we get to hear a new perspective from a survivor. We've talked about grooming, the process of luring a targeted victim into trafficking, during some of the survivor stories this season, but we haven't focused on it in detail. Today's guest, Callie, wanted to get specific about this part of human trafficking that's often overlooked.
I think getting a new perspective on this issue will help us all to have a better understanding of how complex human trafficking is. When we talked over Skype, Callie explained that her experience was a little different. She wasn't trafficked as a teenager or young adult. She was 33. Callie used to sing with an opera company. She had a dance studio. She says she was, quote, pretty normal, end quote, as much as being in an opera company and having a dance studio is normal. Seems pretty extraordinary to me. It was when she and her ex-fiance broke up that she was financially vulnerable. She couldn't afford to keep her dance studio. In this moment of vulnerability, a trafficker found her and began readying Callie for his purposes.
I especially loved her telling about a particularly special moment I got to witness during her first few weeks with us at End Slavery. As always, please keep in mind that this conversation discusses sexual matters and may be triggering for trauma survivors and may not be appropriate for children. We are now thrilled to introduce you to Callie.
So I was a little bit older whenever it all came about. That's why I'm kind of like, age really doesn't have that much to do with it. It can still happen.
I'm really glad you said that, because a lot of the women we've spoken with have had a much younger experience. So I'm really interested to hear your experience coming from, it started when you were an adult, well into being an adult.
Yeah. There was some stuff as a kid, but it wasn't extensive, but it's kind of like, I'm sure that played into it. But
do you mean in
went to
terms of
college,
things that were happening at home?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But like as in, I went to college, for a few years, always held a full-time job. So all of that was completely, what I call society's norm. And I remember I can't even try to think when I met my trafficker. I don't even remember the exact time, but I do remember that he started being everywhere I was. And it was enough to where I was like, well, that's weird.
Do you mean like at your work, at your...
No, it was actually in like personal life. Like I have tattoos. He had tattoos. I think maybe I met him when I was getting a tattoo or just saw him in there, and that, he wasn't from the same state. He was from a different state, and he dressed really nice and, very well spoken. Talked a little bit, and then I went out with my friends, and he's kind of right there. And I'm like, guys, still didn't think it was odd. It's like a restaurant club type place. That's normal. Next time I go to get something done, like at the tattoo, he's there again. And I'm like, well, now maybe that's weird, but maybe not. Maybe that's, that's kind of cool,
Sure. Thinking it's maybe like just, oh, we have the same, we do the same things. This, what a coincidence.
Yeah. It's a coincidence. It's, it's a larger city, but it's still a small town because it's in the South. And even large cities are still small, kind of.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of like, he's from a totally different state. He had this really great job, well-spoken. So I was like, oh, this is different than, it's kind of nice. And we started talking and started talking a lot, like on the computer and everything. And all the things I was interested in, he had a lot of knowledge of, which was really cool. But come to find out, which he even later said, he would, whenever I talk about something, like even if it was opera, he would go and Google what I was talking about to make it look like he had a lot of information about it.
But you didn't know that at the time. At the time, you just think, oh, wow, we have a lot in common.
We have a lot in common, or he's very knowledgeable. He's got a lot of knowledge about a lot of different things. But yeah, he would search, like if I talked about a certain opera we were doing, he would search that opera and be like, well, yeah, when this character, and I'm like, whoa, that's, I've never had that interaction with a guy, ever around here. This is not this area. And it kind of slowly progressed to there to where he asked me out and we went out, and I, I don't remember being that like enthralled at first, but it's just kind of like, oh, he's nice to talk to. And it slowly like turned into like a boyfriend situation. And it was slow. Like, it's like I tell anybody, it wasn't like in a week, oh, okay, here, do this. It was probably honestly about almost a year. But in that year, there were so many big things that happened. Like he started to take on this role of, I'm gonna take care of you. And I don't like you living in this part of town. You deserve better. Here, let me provide that for you. So out of nowhere, he said, look, I'm going to get you an apartment, better part of town, but I want to do this for you because, I care about you and, whatnot. You haven't had a good break. And so he got an apartment, got all new furniture, and just said, here, this is yours. And I was a little bit like, okay, that's different, but it's really nice. It's kind of nice that somebody, he cares enough about me that,
Sure.
he doesn't want me here. He wants me here. And we would go on these really nice trips, and everything was, well, I'm going to protect you, I'm going to just stick with me, whatnot. And then it got to where with the apartment, it got to where the job that I was doing, I couldn't afford it. Initially at first, yes, but then I worked doing commission sales, and with that money kind of went down. I couldn't afford the apartment, I couldn't afford the electricity, I couldn't afford all of that. And then that became, well, I'll get it, but, that's kind of where that,
Oh, interesting.
you got to do some things for me. And then it got even to there, I guess he couldn't. And then it dropped down to like, we got to move you out of here and put you over here. So I moved so many times, like
To a
just so
better
many.
place or to a place that was similar or a worse place?
It went up and down. Like, it would be either similar or it would be somewhere completely away from, like where I had like interaction with my friends or anything. Because that was another thing. He started like pulling me back or trying to turn them on me and me on them. And that kind of just, most of the longer friendships, they kind of dissolved.
Huh.
Because they didn't either want to be around him, or he would, say like, hey, they don't really care about you. They're trying to do this. They're trying to separate us. Look at what I'm doing for you. What are they doing for you?
So when he starts moving you from apartment to apartment, at that point, are you doing anything for him other than letting friendships go? What was he asking you to do?
Initially, it was, hey, if you do this and let me videotape it. It didn't involve other people at first.
Okay.
It was, do this and let me videotape this. I just want it for my collection. Let me videotape me doing this to you, or let me, stuff like that.
Sure.
And it still didn't really send up a flag. I was like, oh, it's just us.
Right.
And then I think whenever it really started to merge over was I lost my job. So then I had no money. So if you have no money, guess what? I can provide you with that money. So here's what we're going to do. And it started off with, I've got this friend, if you do this, we can get this taken care of and whatnot. He said, I'm going to pay for it. And I was like, well, what choice do I have? One, and well, it doesn't seem that bad.
I see.
It's just like a little thing. So we go in, do that. And I remember thinking, this is really not right. But afterwards, I was like, I really didn't feel what I thought I'd feel. I don't really feel anything. I didn't feel anything. But then, okay, good. Well, guess what? I still got electric. But that just started, it started getting more and more to where he had access to my money, everything he had access to.
Because he spent the last year gaining your trust, gaining your interest, and then slowly controlling every part of your life?
Yes. So even like bank accounts, I had a bank account. He got me to draw the money out of the bank account. We got a different bank account that he had control over with me. So he would put money in there that I don't even know where it all came from. And then whenever he wanted, he would pull it all out to where I'd be left with nothing.
Yeah.
And then he would kind of like almost give me kind of an allowance. But it was so, like I said, it wasn't like, oh, in 2 weeks, hey, do this, do this. It was this trust built. So I'm like, well, he's doing this. He's
It's
being,
like you've
nice.
integrated your lives together so much that it's hard to see where your life ends and his life, it is all
Yeah,
one almost.
yeah. And
Mm.
it's, it was merging into, well, I don't really have any other way of surviving. And then I think it got to the point to where that you start feeling beat down, and then it's like it shifted from you deserve this to this is all you can do. You're not worth anything
Oh,
else.
wow.
Look, you lost your job, so what other option do you have? This is what you're good at. This is what you're going to have to do. Otherwise, what are you going to do? You're going to be on the street. You can't be anything
Mm.
without me.
And do you have any idea what it was that attracted him to you that made him pick you to start manipulating?
I think in me at the time, I think it was the fact that, I had so much loss. I didn't really have a family. I didn't really have anybody to go to, that right then it was just me. And I think either that was just pretty easy to pick up on, to be like, well, how's your family? And they're like, oh, I was a foster. I was like, so you're telling them this information that's just common knowledge. But I
Mm.
guess in hindsight, yeah, I could see how that would be like, oh, well, she's down right now. So this is a good time. And him kind of saying, I'll protect you, I'll provide for you,
Mm.
I care about you, you're doing, you're good, you're beautiful here and all this, you're kind of like, oh, this is nice.
A lot of the survivors I've talked with, their trafficker had multiple people at the same time. Was this true of yours, or, had he done this before?
initially initially I didn't know, I didn't think so.
Mm.
But I remember I got on his phone one time and he had left it open, and there was something in my head. I'm like, well, why has he got 4 different phones? You start questioning these
Huh.
things. And this was kind of early on, but it was after kind of like the stuff that was a little bit, more like getting hit, being forced to do this started. And I was just curious, and I looked, and there was other girls on his phone,
Hmm.
just in the different, just everything the same. And I was just like,
Huh.
I'm not the only one.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's why I appreciate that you want to talk about the grooming process, because I think that's something that there's this perception that human trafficking looks like kidnapping. And this is a very subtle, nuanced sort of a situation that if we can better understand that and if we can better educate our children, there's a better way to look for these red flags. So, what would you say? I mean, you've mentioned quite a few things already, but what would you say from your experience the red flags are?
For me, would be kind of pulling me away from family that I have, pulling me away from like longtime friends, just kind of isolating me, to where he pulled me into his world, and he was in a gang, but pulling me into that, to where these are the people who are going to care about you, even though they're the same people who ended up really hurting me, they were also the ones who are like, well, we'll protect you if anything happens. So it was a weird dichotomy.
Sure.
And so on one end, you're like, I'm being hurt, but on the other end, guess what? I can be protected. And it messes
Right.
with your mind to where you don't know how to,
Mm.
you're like, well, that's how it is,
Because you would almost feel like if you were to push back, if you were to cut off that resource, you would be working against yourself.
Yeah,
You would almost feel like you were hurting yourself if you were to step away from that situation.
yeah. And then it was the fear of, well, if he already has control of all my money and all this, I don't have a way. I don't have anybody to say, hey, I need help,
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh,
because then
yeah.
you get embarrassed. Even if you kind of see it, you get a little bit embarrassed about, and it's almost confusing, because you're like, well, maybe it's not right, but maybe it's okay, but and not really knowing. It's like your instinct says this isn't good,
Hmm.
but you start like kind of pushing that to the back, and just being like, I have to survive. I have to survive. What do I do to survive? And then that just puts blinders on you, and it's like, you know,
Felt like you
there's
didn't
so,
have any options.
yeah. But then there also, like I always said, there was always this one part to where if you did good, if you did what was expected of and asked of you, you were rewarded.
Oh,
So, and that's kind of, I think that's a big part. You're like, oh, well, that feels nice. I have never
hmm.
had this before. So it's just, there's so many different little boxes, I guess,
Hmm.
that everything could be in, like, oh, I get rewarded. This is nice. I've never had these kind of nice things. It feels nice. I feel like I'm at the level of everybody else, to this feels awful. I don't like this, but I can't tell anybody I don't like this because I don't have anybody to tell, but they'll probably blame me because I put myself in this situation.
Wow. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Did you always feel that he cared about you and that he loved you, or was there a time when you no longer believed that?
Yeah, there came that time, and I think it was whenever, like I said, he was in a gang, and it got to where whenever he was putting me up for the other gang members, and was like, okay, here's, and it wasn't just me. Some of the other ones would have other girls, and you would be lined up and say, this is how much I expect you to make. If you don't get this much, I'm going to sell you off to just one of them. So which would you rather do? Figure out how to get the money, or would you want me to sell you off for the weekend to, whoever I choose? And it just gets to where you get pitted against the same people that having the same thing done to them as you are to you. So instead of those being like your allies, they're also your enemy, because if you don't make the money, then you're the one who gets the repercussions.
Oh. So I'm wondering, how does that play out? You're essentially saying the women who were in your same position, you couldn't even be allies or whatever because you were pitted against each other.
Yes. Yeah.
What did those relationships look like? Did you see them often, or was it just kind of this abstract sense that they are the competitor?
Some of you did. Like there was always going to be one or two. Like I remember one or two that we would kind of get each other's back if things got a little bit, or we tried to buffer it for each other. But as a whole, not everybody's like that. So you'll have one that's wanting to throw you under the bus, and it's like, no, it's that street mentality of either I'm gonna survive this. I'm going to get the money so I can go off and, relax for the weekend or whatever, and not have anything done to me. Or do I just sit back and let it happen to me so it doesn't happen to you? And it's, I think that was probably one of the hardest things to start whenever after I got in the safe house and everything, was trying to figure out that with other survivors. They're not my enemy.
That's a new sort of language that we haven't heard before. We've heard a lot of conversation about it's so important to have, Nicole talked about community. Without a community, it's so hard to have accountability and all these things. But this sort of I'm sure there's sort of this weighing process in your mind of, I've been groomed to believe this about,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the people who are in my same situation. And yet these are the
Yeah.
people who understand best what I'm going through.
Yeah. And it took me a little while. I think anybody that knows it took me a little while. But once I kind of, got to know them and realized, like, wait a minute, now their situations are the same as mine. They get it. And that's where, like, I wouldn't trade any of those relationships for anything. Those are my sisters. Those are, but it initially it wasn't. It was like, who are you? Are you for or are you against? Like everything's for and against.
What was the turning point for you? How did you come to be within slavery?
Like even after I realized, like, he doesn't give a crap about that, it still went on because it was still stuck. Like it was still stuck and it was getting worse, but I had to survive. And, it was kind of more like me, like figuring out, how do I manipulate him to be able to have like the least amount of repercussions on me? And it was a matter of, and that did involve me trying to pull in other girls, to take the heat off me by, I'm not saying it's right, but it's like you're in this bubble of complete survival. And it's you against figuring out for you, how do I survive? The transition out was just, something just clicked. Something just clicked. I think it was just, it got to the point to where it was so just like back to back, it was too much. Like sometimes there'd be a span of like a week or 2 weeks where nothing would happen because he was traveling. And it got to where it was just constant. And I was done. I don't know how to explain it. It's like either I'm fixing to die or I've got to try. And I think the way it all happened was the person who I didn't even know the person. I just said, I got to get out. The response was so quick from me saying that to that person and having somebody from the FBI contact me to that person meeting me within 30 minutes. Because if it hadn't been that quick, I would have backed up and said, nope. But the fact that it was just so, I didn't have time to think. It was just respond.
Derry, do you find, is that intentional on the side of law enforcement and organizations like End Slavery?
Very much so, both for the reason that Callie stated and because the window of opportunity is sometimes very small away from a trafficker and able to get away.
As I said, that's exactly how it was with me. It was he was out of town, and I literally had 48 hours to figure out a plan. It had to go, and then I did. I almost backed out. I tried to say I don't have any money where I'm going, and I almost backed up and said, "Well, if I can meet him, and I know I can do X, Y, Z, and get a few hundred," but I didn't. I had somebody good that was pushing me the whole time from here. That was like, "Don't go, just go, just go. Don't turn your phone." So.
Callie, is there anything that you would want to tell an agency like End Slavery Tennessee about how best to help survivors?
I think the immediate response, that's like to respond quick, I think is the biggest. And that did happen. Like originally I didn't even know slavery existed. But once I got to Nashville, a lot of things just fell through nobody's fault, and then the person, she was actually my therapist here, said, "Hey, try this organization." And I picked up the phone after I was in the domestic violence shelter 2 days. And all I said was, "I'm scared. He's fixing to come find me." And it wasn't 10 minutes. And that was that, and it was almost like a whirlwind to where you're like, I don't know what's going on, but this can't, and there was resistance by me, but it was quick. There almost wasn't that time to think, but in the same sense, it was, hey, we're here, but let's just keep you moving for like the first few days. I was moving, if that makes sense. I didn't have time to like get the phone or which was good.
One of the things that when I think about, the argument of, can't you just leave? If I were to put myself in your shoes, I would absolutely think, well, they would come find me. I mean, that's sort of, I would be afraid that I was going to be sought after. Was it comforting for you to be moved a lot?
It was, I think, yes, but I also don't think that I really thought too much about it, because I was constantly had that hypervigilance of, okay, wait, who's this, who's that? I don't know crowds. I don't know, there's two, but in a way, yes. But it was also like, okay, there's a safety here, and I know that but guess what? There's some backup behind me.
There are two things I'm curious about. One is you had learned not to trust anybody, so you had to learn to trust fellow survivors. But also, I keep hearing this story, and I heard it with you, that your trafficker started out by giving you things just because he cared about you, just because he wanted to help you. And the same thing happens when you start a recovery process. You're being given housing and clothing and medical care. And I imagine it's really hard to trust that there are no strings attached.
Yeah, it was initially, but I still remember like walking in and like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, this is real, they're not. And it took a little bit, I guess, to figure out the balance and just kind of watch and see. And, is this true? Like, what do I have to, am I fixing to have to go and get into all this legal stuff? And, am I fixing to be forced to have to talk and have to tell them this and this and this? I didn't, but in your head, you're like, what's fixing to happen here?
Absolutely.
My earliest memories of you, Callie, were when you first came. Understandably, you were very shut down. You didn't make eye contact. You kept your head down. You weren't trusting. That's perfectly understandable and typical. And I remember a moment when you were given a gift, and it felt like that made a big difference.
Yeah, which is funny because it's sitting right here behind me. I'm a musician. I, sing, play piano. That's kind of what I did, my whole life. And I don't know if it's just like I've missed it, or it's like that's just kind of a way where I could get stuff out that's not words. Because words, I don't always have words, especially when I don't really know somebody or whatnot. And I remember we're sitting in the back of the old office, and said, hey, somebody wants to talk to you in the computer room. And I'm thinking it's somebody from the FBI, it's somebody's police. I'm not wanting to talk to anybody. And like Derry said, I didn't really talk. I stayed back watching. And then I remember walking in, and I still didn't get it. Like, there was a keyboard sitting there. And I'm like, I don't know who some of these people are, but I don't. I'm like, why are they all looking at me? Where are the cops? And then I kind of looked over and there's his keyboard. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like it was, and I did. I remember I put that thing up and I played. And it's just like, it was just kind of like this, getting back to something that I loved that was taken from me. And it was just given back to me.
Wow.
That was a beautiful thing to watch from the outside. I think you spent most of the day in there.
Oh, I did. I did. Didn't have piano, didn't care. I was like, let me just find something. I'm good.
To draw back on the word dichotomy that you so wonderfully used earlier in our conversation, I'm seeing a sort of parallel between your trafficker would give you things for the purpose of grooming you to trust him so he could abuse you. And I wondered how you felt in this moment being presented with a gift that was purely for your enjoyment just because you were being loved. Genuinely, people wanted to take care of you in a way that was for your benefit. Did that even come to mind?
It didn't. And I didn't even think about this till you just posed that question. The things I was given were always materialistic. Always. It was either, here's you some super nice clothes. Let me take you on a big trip. And the trip always involved something else when we got there. It's stuff that like I could take it or leave it,
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to give it to me, oh, this is nice. I feel good, like nice designer shoes, dresses, all of that. Whereas anything that I truly enjoyed, the music I no longer did offer, no longer, had a keyboard or a piano. All of that, the stuff that I really enjoyed that was taken away from me was given back to me by enslavery. So it's two different, if that makes sense.
Yes.
The things that I enjoyed were taken from me on one end, but the things I was given was materialistic. Like it wasn't stuff that's gonna, it was honestly, it was to enhance me, to make me look more profitable. Let's just, that's reality.
It was really for his gain.
Yes.
And taking away the things from you that made you who you are.
Yes.
Whereas in slavery was giving you things to feed who you are.
Yes. So it's like that never even crossed my mind that they were the same. I think because of that.
Oh, that's
they
great.
took more of the time to see like, what is it that you enjoy? What is it that you didn't have or got taken away from, because every girl's got something. Everybody's got a thing. Once even they remember that they have that thing that they enjoy, that they're good at, it's just different.
That's got to be hard, you saying once they remember. That has to be difficult when you're involved in psychological warfare for a long time. But I'm sure some people even forget what it is that loved that.
Oh, I forgot.
I
forgot. Yeah. Yeah, because it's not something you're doing. You're focused on completely something else.
Survival,
something
I'm
else.
sure.
Yeah. So you don't like that. That's just a thing of the past. That's just something fellas used to do. That's kid stuff. But it's you're not gonna say, hey, I'd really like to go play my piano before I do this trick. Like that's just not gonna happen.
Right. Right.
If you were to talk to someone who might be listening to this who is actually in the grooming process, what would you say?
Trust your gut. Trust your gut. Don't dismiss it, because I'm telling you that I had the gut. There was something, if whatever it is, and talk to people. It's not your fault. You're getting manipulated by the person. So it's not you. You're not doing anything to cause that person to basically manipulate you. And just be aware, if you're getting given and getting given and getting given, then all of a sudden it starts turning into, but you kind of owe me this. That's not love. It's not real care.
Perfect.
Or if you're getting taken away from the things that you love and care about, that's not what that is. No matter how young you are, no matter how old you are, you can get out. Like there's more to it. On the other side of the fence, there is still stuff there. You're not done. Even if you're involved, you're not done.
End Slavery Tennessee thanks Jones Legacy Group for their continued support and exclusive sponsorship of this first season of Someone Like Me. Executive producer is Derry Smith. Producer and editor is Gregory Byerline. Music by Kurt Goebel. If you like what you're hearing, please tell a friend and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm Leslie Eiler Thompson. Thank you for listening.